Thunder grunts.
Hey guys,
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
why don't you introduce yourselves?
I am Jimmy George, a full-time script consultant and a screenwriter, and I have my voice back.
It's back.
It's pretty
back.
much back.
I'm Jamie Nash, and I'm a screenwriter, and my voice was always here.
And I'm Bob Rose, and I'm the voice of a generation.
That's right.
Right. All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about a movie that I think we just said right before we start recording. This could be a 3-hour episode.
Holy shit.
And we're not going to do a 3-hour
No.
episode. But we want
4 hours.
Yeah, 4
Yeah,
hours.
4 hours.
We're going to be here for the rest of the week.
It's Writers Blockbusters IMAX edition.
We actually have locked the doors and everything. We have toilet paper, bread, and milk.
All right, we're
So
good.
We're ready to go. We're going to talk about Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
The script to Into the
The
Spider-Verse.
script.
Which,
Yes.
this is a first, I think, for this show, is all three of us have read the script in
Yep.
full. Because if you don't know, on this show, we take the finished movie as the script because that way, that's the only version we all would know is accurate and we can use is the finished movie. But this time, we actually have all seen the movie and read the script that's supplied by the studio, right?
Right.
That's right.
And Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you say that sometimes they supply scripts that are edited to retrofit the movie?
I suspect this one is one of those.
Yeah, it seemed really on the nose.
Yeah, you find, like, I remember the one that comes to mind, because I remember when Force Awakens came out, and there was some questions I had about it. Like, I was hoping the screenplay had, like, the extra scenes and stuff. And when they finally showed up with the screenplay, because I guess they wanted it to win awards or something,
Yeah.
it was exactly like the movie. It was even underplayed a little bit, like
Right.
the movie had more. And I get the feeling that's what this is, and that's usually they almost go back and conform it to the edits. They don't give away like threads they might have had or deleted scenes.
Yeah.
And
This
feels like
this
that.
felt like I was literally watching the movie
Mhm.
again.
I think.
I can't believe it would be that on the nose. But then again, I've never read an animation script, I think.
Yeah.
So
And so there was one interesting thing I noticed was how it labeled the sequences, which felt like very much like animation notes.
It gave them titles.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to ask you guys about that. Is that a common thing with animation? Do you know?
I've never seen
Never
it
seen it
myself.
before.
I'm gonna for anyone listening, I'm gonna put a link to the script to download the script if you're interested in reading it.
It almost
that-
feels
yeah.
like it's labeled for the animation department, you know. The only one thing that I noticed different than the script, and it was such a subtle thing, is when he tells his dad he loves him as Spider-Man.
Mhm.
In the script, it's just "I love you" with an exclamation point, and in the movie, he's trying to play it cool. Remember, and he changes his voice and everything. So that was the only thing I noticed different in the whole script. It was like,
It's otherwise. I mean, I didn't notice
Yeah.
that, but it was on the nose. Like,
yeah,
The guy, I think his name's Rodney Rothman. He's on Twitter. He was the one that shared it. I almost think it might be worth a question to him to ask about those sequences, if that's a common thing, and
Yeah.
for some explanation.
for learning.
Seems like a good guy. He might answer.
But
The-
that
the-
being said,
the
don't
animators have been on Twitter talking about the movie.
I know, and I
constantly.
love
It's
that.
great.
I
It's
love
so
that.
great.
They're
Find all those
sharing their
people.
insight. It's great.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you before we dug into all these things, we're going to talk about the breakdown of the storytelling. Again, we've talked about this with the Incredibles episode. Like, do you think this was written first and then animated, or do you think this was created during the animation process, the scripting?
So there's a little bit of information out there that I'll say. So the two writers of this credited were Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman. From what I can tell, years ago, remember the whole Sony hack incident and
Yeah.
stuff like
Yep.
that? This movie was actually leaked, like some discussions about this movie were leaked at that time. So that
Wow.
goes back to 2014, I
Yeah.
think. And at that point, it was Lord and Miller working on a treatment that they would produce for someone else to come and write. So my guess is Lord and Miller wrote a lot of it,
Okay.
and then there could have been other writers. There could have been Rothman is one of the directors. He probably came in late and helped guide the screenplay down the path. One of the things they said this movie, I read this somewhere, I can't remember, somewhere in the internet, in the development, this movie had one of the longest storyboards of the board process or whatever, their animatics, or I don't even know specifically what it is, but they said it was 2 hours long. So in animated films, and I've worked on a couple myself that haven't quite gotten to this. I've never had one produced, but I've worked in the early stages.
Didn't you have like a French Smurfs one or something? I remember you asked me about that.
That was a mix of live action and real.
Okay.
But the same guy, actually. We went on to work on another one that he was an animation guy. And they do a whole process where I was writing a treatment. At the same time, animators were going and boarding up this treatment and making the characters and showing what the sequences look like. From that, they were going to do a full-length animatic to sit and watch.
As you were writing?
As I was writing.
That's why I asked
it kind of was going hand in hand with the writing process. Again,
it's totally different.
He's talked about this.
I have limited experience with it, but I think this is the way it generally goes. It's probably
I think you're right.
Yeah. So they make a full-length animatic that's, very sketchy and quick and stuff like that. But they watch that. They score it. They put sound effects in it. They do all that stuff, and then they sit and watch it, and they give notes on that. What I've heard about this one which was weird, is that their animatic was over 2 hours long for this movie. And they said it's because Lord and Miller have a process where they like to overstuff movies with ideas and then pare them back.
Okay.
Where most animation, they're trying, because it's so time consuming even to do these animatics.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep them short.
Right.
They're trying to make them almost exactly what you'd see.
Yeah, Toy Story's 70 minutes.
Yeah. So
this script is 135 pages.
I know.
Which is long.
It took me 2 hours, 2 hours and change to read.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who read it recently, we were discussing, he noticed that they also used, if you look in Final Draft, they use tight format as opposed to loose or normal format. So it's probably another 10 pages long.
It's very truncated. I saw that.
Which I noticed a lot of screenplays out there do that nowadays.
Yeah, they're cheating.
They use that tight format. So 133 pages, tight format. But it goes to show you, because the movie, I don't know, I don't have the runtime in front of me. It probably clocks in at 90 minutes or 95 or something.
I feel like you know what? Reading it, I feel like it felt like a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
I know that's a weird thing to say. When I saw it felt 90 minutes, but I have no idea.
So
I don't either.
It kind of goes to show you that whole page.
One page.
How long do we remember how long the Lego movie was? The other animated movie
I don't remember.
They wrote.
I don't remember.
But you're right. It does go to show you, like, sometimes that 1 page per minute is not accurate at all.
So with spacing, they changed the spacing. So talking about animation, as we've established, it's kind of different with the script process.
But by the way,
can be.
This is the runtime of this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
It says it's, and I don't even remember this. It says it's 117 minutes. That's what IMDb says.
So it's almost 2 hours.
It's almost 2 hours. I don't remember it being that long.
Okay.
It goes by
so it's about
pretty quick.
20 pages off that page to minute.
That's amazing. It's a brisk movie.
Yeah, it packs so much
and it packs so much into it.
Oh my gosh.
It's that after credits. It's very rare that you see an animated film that long, because basically the thought is kids' attention spans, who mainly go see animated films, just, they won't last that long.
Right.
They'll give up about the 90-minute mark. So it's pretty rare.
Or just the average viewer now.
Well, also, like, I know that they got this is only Phil Lord, right? And the end product is Phil Lord, but they've made 3 animated movies. They've written 3 animated movies so far. I think, if I could be wrong. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Lego Movie, this. I can't remember if they did the sequel to Cloudy.
I don't remember.
But all those movies are jam-packed.
Right.
And they go by like lightning.
So fast.
They're kind of masters at that balance. So
I agree.
Yeah.
So we don't have a definitive answer as to whether it was the script first or the animation first.
I bet there was a mix. There was probably the treatment. There was probably script. They probably did a board. Then they probably rewrote.
Yeah.
And just the mere fact that director, I think I read that those directors came on board later in the process. They weren't on from the beginning.
One of them's the Rise of the Guardians guy, right?
Right,
Gotcha.
right.
Which is a great underrated animated movie.
I haven't seen it. I want to.
Really great, weird movie.
But the fact that director who came on later got a writing credit tells me that there was a lot of writing throughout
Yeah.
the process.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So okay.
It's like the Mission Impossible thing.
Yeah, it's a lot like
The
what
stunts-
we talked about.
the
with
stunts
Chris
dictate-
McQuarrie. Yeah,
the stunts dictate
Yeah.
the script, whereas here the animators and the director.
yeah.
It's all because animated movie's made in post. It is post.
It's
right?
it's very
I mean, yeah.
exactly.
It's made in post.
very instructive because if there's people out there listening who are interested in writing an animated movie, it's good for them to know these things.
My
going
guess
in.
is Lord Miller came in with that Spider-Verse pitch, the parallel universe and all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff, and the tone and everything.
And then they
were
brought
like,
the
"Let's
Miles
do it."
Morales script,
That's right.
merged it with that,
That's
probably.
Right. I'm
so
thinking
glad
that.
they did.
So
Yeah,
Ugh.
totally.
I think I bet they came. I bet they came
Because
in
the
with Miles
Spider-Verse thing
Morales
is
and
the
Spider-Verse.
Lego idea. That's the Lego
Yeah.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs
Yeah.
idea. The pop Spider-Man
Yeah.
thing.
But- By the way, Lego movie 100 minutes runtime.
Okay, so that's not
Okay.
terribly far off. From
Not
that.
terribly far off, but you figure with credits, it was probably 90 minutes, 10 minutes of
90,
credits.
And the
Yeah.
credits have the song that plays that everyone sat
Yeah.
through anyway,
Exactly.
right? So,
exactly.
Jamie, what so far? Because this movie's still in theaters. What's the business been like? The box office. We
It's-
forgot to talk about the box
No,
office.
I know.
It's 302 million worldwide,
Okay.
147 domestic, 154 foreign. So it's kind of neck and neck, foreign and domestic. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe the comedy aspect, it appeals
Yeah.
as much domestically as it does.
I've been
the foreign
screaming
market.
from the mountaintops. Go see it.
I feel like everyone I know has. So
It's
My nephew who loves Spider-Man hasn't seen it.
It's-
It's because it's just,
it's weird time to release a Spider-Man movie, which it acknowledges.
yeah.
its budget was
Itself,
90 million, but when you think about it, since the Sony hack, we've had Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man became part of the Marvel universe.
Venom.
Venom was I know it was derided. I've not even seen it.
Neither
it made
have
a
I.
ton
Gotta
of money.
admit, I've seen it twice.
It made a ton of money.
Had a ball with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like schlock, and it's great.
That's
it's
great.
schlock. So
And now this. So they've kind of rebooted, I think effectively rebooted what they're doing with
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
and this
for sure.
excuses all those things to exist together.
Yeah,
It does.
which
Right.
is like something we can talk
Exactly.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
So,
Something we can
so
talk about.
Venom, as bad as the reviews were, not that this is a Venom podcast, but 213.
I would love to do a Venom podcast.
So that movie's pushing $1 billion. It's 855
That's
million
insane.
worldwide for a
Venom.
movie. Yeah, Venom. So it's
Wow.
213 domestic, 642 foreign.
Critics
Good for
don't matter.
Tom
Critics
Hardy.
don't matter.
God.
Yeah. Yeah, I could talk about Venom for like 2 hours. We're not going to talk about Venom though. We're going to talk about Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
yes,
the-
what we've been talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we already talked about development history. Let's talk about the IP thing
Okay.
because I mean,
Yeah.
how can
This
you
was
not?
your question.
I think yes, this was
Yes.
mine because this movie is one of those. It's one of those movies, kind of like I said this a lot with Homecoming, with Spider-Man: Homecoming, where you have to have a lot of pre-knowledge of either the source
Mhm.
or the franchise to get half of this stuff.
Right.
This is not like
It
this isn't my mom's
it
Spider-Man
exists
movie,
as a response to what came before.
which these guys are masters of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
they are.
is-
yeah.
Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you think, Jamie, about how respecting the IP changes the story?
I it's really interesting, and we've seen a lot in the Marvel movies in general.
Well, that's like
There's-
writing a TV show, so yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This one did an interesting thing. I mean, that whole opening with, "Hey, let's do this one last time," and,
Yeah.
and they were going through and they showed actual clips from the movies.
Sam
Right.
Raimi
Yeah,
and all
I mean,
movies, yeah.
When I say actual clips, like recreated.
Yeah,
clips.
yeah.
They showed actual products that people have bought.
Mhm.
They did all this kind of stuff.
It's postmodern Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It happened already. Spider-Man has been a thing.
Here's what I'll say about it. I feel like I'll quote one of or not quote, but I'll reference one of Bob's favorite movies. I feel like
Is it Space Jam?
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm
No.
kidding. That's not one of my favorites.
where Shrek. I remember when I remember when Shrek first came about. I thought the interesting thing that it was doing was it was appealing to different people on
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
levels.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what this movie's doing.
Yeah.
It's still cool for a kid to come watch Spider-Man, and I don't think they need all the knowledge. They can just know, oh, this is a dense backstory. But I'm following this Miles Morales kid.
Exactly.
And I'm going to watch his journey and his origin. Yes, there's all this other backstory nonsense going on that'll be explained, but I'm following Miles.
Yeah.
Whereas the
It's a
other
perfect
stuff,
audience surrogate.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I mean, like, how could you get more perfect?
Yeah.
yeah,
Really,
where the other stuff is feeding us who have watched all of these movies. It started with Spider-Man on the Electric Company or something. I don't think there was an Electric Company joke unless I missed it.
There's a 60s Spider-Man,
There's 60s
obviously.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, spoilers. Oh, this is going to be all spoilers. So,
So, they were throwing out all kinds of nuggets for us and just comic book stuff and the look of it and everything. But I think a kid can still sit down and watch it. So it's really appealing to a bunch of different interests all at once.
I think the Shrek is a perfect description, like parallel, because it's almost like a spoof
the pop
on
music
Spider-Man,
Mhm.
but a Spider-Man movie in itself. Which I think Shrek is a spoof on fairy tales, but a fairy tale in itself.
Right.
I'm not disagreeing. I just don't like Shrek that much.
I had this moment where I realized people who are listening for the first time are probably like, "Why the hell are they laughing their ass off at the mention of Shrek?" They don't know the history.
Yeah,
with
Bob.
it's like
So yeah.
like,
I don't hate Shrek.
what's so funny?
No, Bob doesn't mind Shrek. He hates Mike Myers.
Oh my God!
No,
Don't
just-
put that out there. I love Mike Myers. I love you forever. You're my heart forever. I just said Kung Fu Panda
Bob's
was
blushing.
better. That's all I said. And I was joking, and a bunch of
Bob
people
likes
online.
Jack Black more than Mike Myers. We get it.
They both serve a different part of the stomach.
Except
that
in
they fill you
Bohemian
up.
Rhapsody.
Jamie is secretly an amazing button pusher.
Jamie's honestly, you should be a professional troll more than a screenwriter. You'd be better at it.
If only that paid.
It doesn't pay very good.
It doesn't pay.
It pays spiritually.
Oh, well, you can get
Okay,
elected. No.
but
so one thing I wanted that I didn't realize watching the movie, but upon reading the script realized is how I understood how self-aware it was, but
Right.
I didn't realize they were using Peter Parker specifically to point all of this self-awareness out. Like okay.
Explain what you mean there, because
Okay,
that seemed like it was on the surface.
So it breaks the fourth wall when so here's the various things, because we all know the IP that it does, that I didn't really notice. I was just so entrenched in everything that was happening, I didn't notice the techniques they were using. So it breaks the fourth wall with introducing each new Spider-Man, right? It uses the audience familiarity with like all the comic book movies, right? So it points out the MacGuffin. Peter says, "There's always a bypass key, a virus key, a who cares key, a goober," right? And then they like have Peter acknowledge the end of the world stakes and the ticking clock that's typical. He says, "This is pretty standard Spider-Man stakes." And guess what? In a second, he's going to say, "You only have 24 hours." And then Kingpin says, "You only have 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then like in the middle of getting chased through the woods by Doc Ock, he suddenly screams out, and it says in the script, to the audience, and this is the moment when I'm losing the fight. Like there's constantly moments where Peter Parker himself is talking to us.
I just want to point out, I know I already said not to, but everything you're saying right now and all the things it's pointing out, Venom does exactly that.
Oh, really?
And that's the difference between those two movies. Venom is the movie they're commenting on.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like the most hack everything.
Well,
Everything's hack.
I was going to say most movies are that. And
most movies are that. I'm just saying in this franchise, though, in the Spider-Man verse.
Right. And
yeah.
I think most movies are that. That's the interesting thing here. All genres reach a point where they have to become parodies.
Almost. They reached the last action hero.
They have to become
yeah.
Like Scream.
Scream had to happen, and then basically Now the sad thing is that usually means it's almost time for them to go away for a while.
But
usually, I don't think superheroes are in that run.
They're not going to go away, but we're also in a
that.
very weird place where, like, I feel it's happened 3 or 4 times with superheroes so far. Yeah. Deadpool's obviously a huge one. This almost feels like the Deadpool of Spider-Man.
It does.
Yeah. It is.
When I was watching it,
yeah.
I was most comparing it to Deadpool. It's
right.
the kids' Deadpool.
It is.
That's what it felt like.
It's like intentionally that.
Deadpool.
And Deadpool had to happen too.
Yeah.
It was time for Deadpool. If we had thrown out Deadpool in 1990,
it wouldn't have worked.
It might have been like, whoa, wait, we want to see the.
Well, if he was commenting on that, that boom in the the Batman, Superman, Phantom stuff, I guess. But,
maybe we weren't ready for Mystery Men back then.
Yeah, no, Mystery Men should come out next year.
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
Yeah, wrong time for it.
Wrong time.
Incredible movie.
Right.
I love that movie.
So all genres kind of go through this where you get to that point. And by the way, this isn't the first movie. Like we've mentioned, Deadpool, Homecoming to an extent commented a little bit. It kind of had its cake and ate it too a little bit.
Self-aware, but not in like a toxic way or anything.
Right.
It was just like just there. Like,
I
by the
think-
way,
I think maybe Guardians even sort of does it.
There's an element of it. Yeah.
Maybe even the Marvel universe. is
Guardians
starting
feels
to do
like
it.
a
But this-
shake up in tone.
the difference here is this is the fourth wall break.
It is
Yeah.
the fourth wall.
This
break.
is those movies.
from
if there's
Peter Parker.
literally from Peter.
Yeah.
Several Peter Parkers.
Yeah. But I mean,
yeah.
he's the main one who's talking to the audience. If you look in the script, like even in the prose, it says he's talking to the audience. You know, it doesn't say like voiceover. It says, and then Peter says to the audience, like it points it out in the script.
But and after reading it yesterday, which I did, it uses the fourth wall break as a function of the story.
Absolutely,
which I think is
it's seamless.
That's the biggest compliment I could give it. It's
Dude.
not just like I love Deadpool, but his fourth wall breaks aren't exactly functional to the story all the time.
I agree.
It's a joke.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
different-
sidebar moment.
It's a sidebar, whereas this movie uses it as part of the actual tale. So
yeah, love it.
it's great.
And it's funny, you guys are everything you guys were just saying. Like to me, was answering the next question.
Oh, go
which
ahead.
was,
Sorry,
like,
I
what
didn't mean to
does
step
no,
in.
no, no.
Yeah.
What does this say about the current state of superheroes from a screenwriting standpoint? I think you guys were just answering.
I think Jamie
it.
kind of landed on that
Well,
already. so.
I want honestly, I wonder because usually when I start seeing this, when movies have to have this, and I admit I haven't seen Aquaman yet. I
Neither
wonder.
have I.
wonder if I'm,
I have. Aquaman is once again. I would say it's like Venom.
Yeah.
In that it's self-aware, but it doesn't say it. It's not like a pop movie.
Yeah.
It's like if you watch Flash Gordon right now.
Right.
It's that kind of a movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what we're getting to, because I'm less interested now in just the straight up superhero movie. I want a taste of something.
You
Yeah.
want the wink.
I want the wink.
You want the
I
wink.
I want
Okay.
it to try something different.
I like sincerity though too. I like either
Me too.
Aquaman is completely sincere, cartoonish,
Yeah.
and this is like completely winky.
I-
I like both.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where I'm
I
not
think he-
sure. I'm not sure.
Is that because like the exhausted of the just there's so
I've
There's
just seen a lot.
fatigue. There's
I've-
fatigue.
I've
Yeah,
seen a lot. I
fatigue. Yeah.
need something different all the
Yeah.
time. I need it to
James-
fuel.
The winking is a symptom of fatigue.
Yeah.
We have to wink as a culture because we're all overloaded with it, right?
right.
After Infinity War, you need a release.
Or in whatever's coming next with Infinity.
yeah, you can't go
War, too.
Infinity War
And
and
I
then
think-
Infinity Holocaust or something. You know what I mean? You can't do
Yeah.
that.
Well, so what this movie does, I actually think is a nice warm up for what Infinity War is probably going to do, and that's that like it proves that the audience is like ready and okay and willing to like watch new people take up the mantles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably what we're going to see with the...
Yeah, we're about to get to the part where the whole thing's rebooted a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though it's
well,
own
Endgame's
reboot.
probably the end of whatever this all was.
Yeah,
or
there's
then.
gonna be.
So, yeah.
It's not gonna be Tony Stark anymore. It's gonna be somebody else. But I think this movie and its reception proves that that's not gonna be a problem. You know.
And the reason this is relevant to our show is because these are all things that I think all three of us agree that they were taking into account when writing
Absolutely, this was in the
Like,
construction.
Like it's in the construction of the actual
Yeah.
script, like
Yeah.
straight up right there.
This
Yeah.
movie is, like you said, like this is a response to the current culture and the
And I would say
And they had to
home,
make it years ago too.
Yeah.
they had
Yeah,
to
they
start
did.
years ago.
I would
the
say
foresight is
yeah,
brilliant.
the foresight.
I would say Homecoming was interesting in that way too, because I had reached a point with the last Spider-Man incarnation where I was like, maybe I'm done with Spider-Man.
too.
I'm just not into this.
To be fair, that was not a very good Spider-Man.
To be
in my
fair,
opinion.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that came out in 1999. I might have loved it. I have no idea.
Exactly,
I'm
it
not
was
sure.
less to do about that work
It
and
felt
more the
repetitive.
collective.
It felt like an imitation
Yep.
of the Tobey Maguire thing.
I appreciate
wasn't
that
as
this
good.
movie.
I agree with
I
you
liked
completely.
I like that this movie did something very specific in the script. In fact, which it doesn't kick that the Amazing Spider-Man's. It doesn't kick it while it's down,
Yeah,
but it does hold up the
other one.
Raimi's.
Yeah.
as like, and it makes fun of the Raimi's too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it
thought
has
that
the-
was a
yeah.
tasteful choice.
It was a tasteful.
Yeah,
it doesn't. It
tasteful
doesn't
choice.
kick anything too hard.
Yeah,
But
you know,
Homecoming.
it's
showed-
not Deadpool.
exactly.
Yeah.
yeah.
Homecoming
Yeah.
showed me a lot different to the point where we have Spider-Man in an Iron Man suit almost, at the Avengers. So it's very different.
He's a different Spider-Man.
It's a different Spider-Man. It's not the Spider-Man I grew up with and wanted to see in a movie when Raimi showed up with it.
Yeah.
But now it's something else and newer. And
Also, a movie that has it would be a different script if Iron Man wasn't in it. We already accepted Iron Man
Absolutely.
completely as a character
Yep.
and a mentor. You don't need to establish any of that
Yep.
in the script. So it was a weird movie to begin
Just like
with.
the question you asked before, our knowledge of the existing IP.
The fact that they don't have to establish Iron Man, he just is Iron Man.
And with
that's
this
a
movie,
whole
they
couple
don't have
that's
to.
like what 10 pages you can just take right out.
Dude, yeah. And then with this movie, they don't have to establish Aunt May or Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy. You know who they are. They just there. Yeah. It's awesome.
I mean, everything. It's all IP.
Well,
Spider-Ham existed.
I know.
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing, and we were talking about mentors and stuff, but Miles is kind of a fish out of water in this universe.
I agree.
But these other characters know the universe, so they can pull him in. So while the audience may or may not know Aunt May, Miles doesn't know Aunt May.
It's true.
So that's a big advantage to pulling that whole thing off.
Well,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He seems to be one of the few Spider-Mans that isn't a Parker.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's this great the fish out of water is him not being in that lineage.
I mean, it's kind of like truly Into the Spider-Verse. If this were Narnia and we walk through the wardrobe, we don't know what's on the other side of the wardrobe, but there might be a character on the other side.
Mr.
Like,
Tumnus. Yeah,
I don't even know this character. I don't know why I picked Narnia. But,
it worked, Jamie.
Tom Bombadil.
Bob
what's the
picked
guy?
No, Mr. Tumnus is that's the
centaur guy.
Yeah.
No, he's not a centaur. He's
he's got weird legs.
There's a name for those guys, but the goat leg boy, Tom McAvoy.
No,
James McAvoy.
All the Narnia fandom is gonna shit on us. That's all.
We just lost all
all of Narnia.
All the C.S. Lewis
Narnia's
fans.
Gone. So much for our Screw Tape Letters podcast.
You know what? I like those movies anyway.
I like it.
But yeah, so there was a question about mentors and writing mentors. What do you think? Are you thinking of Peter Parker, the other Peter Parker? He's kind of the mentor here, right? Is that that's what you're thinking, right?
Peter's definitely the mentor. Yeah. He's the Obi-Wan.
So I loved. I know that I don't want to talk about it early, but I love that the opening one is they in the script they call him R.I. Peter.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
and I love that.
Yeah, because he's the one that dies at the beginning.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the Peter Parker, we're talking about Jake Johnson.
Yeah, Jake Johnson's Peter Parker.
Peter B. Parker.
Yeah, Peter B. Parker.
Peter B. Parker, right.
It's
just to avoid confusion.
Yeah.
Who we're talking about. He's the mentor.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the hobo Spider-Man.
The hobo. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, he's
Yeah, he kind of fits that perfect mold that we've seen in other he doesn't want to be Morpheus.
Yeah, he's the reluctant mentor.
He's the reluctant mentor.
And this definitely would go into the writing is that they apparently approached Tobey Maguire at one point to do this.
Oh, wow.
I read that. I don't know how accurate it is. But Tobey Maguire is almost 40 now, if not past. I think he's done with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But that would have been really interesting because they obviously
it would have interrupted his professional poker career.
Right. But the movie obviously has a reverence for those movies.
Yeah, definitely.
And even though Jake Johnson does an amazing job,
I think so too. I actually can't imagine it as that.
But I view that character as them writing it as if that he was the extension of that specific that trilogy.
That was the intent, I believe.
No, that's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man on screen that we all grew up with and who is now an old man.
Yeah. It's great.
He's kind of this reluctant Miyagi, which is kind of interesting. He doesn't really want a part of it. Now, I always point, like when we talk about the Monster in the House movies with the half man, it's kind of the same mentor character because it's somebody who's seen what they're about to go through.
Right, he survived the battles.
He survived the battles. Now, in those
he's
scripts,
like the old samurai.
Yeah, exactly.
In those scripts, usually the mentor goes on to die at about page 75. This mentor doesn't die so much on page 75.
But they tease it. They subvert it.
They do.
Yeah,
they do, exactly.
Because he's like, I'm gonna. What does he say? He's like, this is what has to be done, and that's when he's like, watch the mouth, not the hands.
Watch the mouth, not the hands.
It was a great payoff. Yeah, and I loved that. This script constantly is subverting expectations.
Also, teaching. Like, you could go into this movie not knowing anything about Spider-Man, and the entire introduction of Jake Johnson's Spider-Man teaches you about all the powers, and invulnerabilities that he has. Like it's like violent and awful, and like the fact that he survives. I was like, it's smart because it's showing you everything that Spider-Man is. It's not just webbing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this specific Spider-Man with his invisibility and his Venom strike and his it's great. Well, the key you were asking about, writing a mentor character. So I think this movie does a good job with the reluctant versus the person who's like, please teach me. But you could do the opposite, and you could be like the person who really wants to teach and the person who doesn't want to be taught. Or you could do they both don't want to do it. Like the teacher doesn't want to teach and the student doesn't want to be
But the situation forces them to do it.
Right. But I said, like, I was thinking the one thing that I don't think would work is where you have both of them are eager. I think that's just boring.
Yeah, it's almost that thing we talk about, the paradox, the tension.
Yeah.
There's no tension there.
Right.
So it doesn't work.
If I may, isn't
they're both, please teach me. Okay.
If I were writing it, I would write it as a romantic relationship.
Perfect.
Where one person's not too sure, but they're still interested.
Yeah. That's a good call.
The reluctance and everything. It's all there, right? I mean,
oftentimes,
I know it's a boy and a man. I'm not.
No. I know.
In certain romantic comedies and things like that, where there's an A and a B kind of character, the B character tends to be a mentor. They tend to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And same
the B
with
story.
Same with buddy cop movies and stuff. There's usually one is kind of, but it's really a love story in some ways, and so I think you're right on that. These stories
it's always
a
love story, really, right?
Yeah, no,
Friendship
it is
love. It's
and he it's very father son. Like, he's like, I'm proud of you. Look at you go. Which I loved.
I would say it's perfectly Big Brother.
Big Brother is perfect.
Which is something that Miles obviously.
Because Miles has a dad.
Miles is looking. No, well, see, the reason this is so great is because to me, Peter B. Parker fills in the gaps of Uncle Aaron.
Right.
He loses his big brother, and then gains one.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
it's perfectly balanced structure. It's a perfect script.
Yeah.
It's really great.
The other things that this movie does well from the mentor mentee is so that there needs to be and I'm sure like Chris Vogler's book breaks this down much better, but this is I was just
which book is that?
Chris
that's the hero's journey.
The hero's journey stuff.
He's got his own title.
He's got 2 or 3 books. And he goes into these types of archetypes very in depth. But I was just kind of commenting on this movie specifically. You usually have your physical trials and your spiritual trials, and this one has don't watch the mouth, watch the hands has 2 beats. The web swinging has 3 beats. The invisibility has 3 beats. The venom strike has 3 beats. It all has like a beginning, middle, and end moment of its own.
Of learning.
Right. And then this one also has the spiritual trials, like use the force, and he is the one in the Matrix. The Matrix is a great example.
This is very much like the Matrix.
Yeah, like where he goes to the Oracle and the Oracle tells him he's not the one. And then when they need him to start believing, he starts finally like using the powers that people said he had, and they say he's beginning to believe. And then in the end, when he's finally triumphing, you hear Morpheus say he is the one.
Right.
And this one has that.
There's also the parallel stories about how he wants to his work with the music and his stickers and everything. Yep. That's who he truly is.
I love that.
And his father won't let him do that.
Yeah.
He truly is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he has to make it to be
exactly.
It's a perfect
it's a
spiritual
great
parallel between the two.
And then they put the exclamation point on it when he actually spray paints his suit logo on the suit. It's perfect.
It's kind of the synthesis of the 2 different stories. B story.
And they make it visual.
They make it visual.
They make it visual.
The script's really incredible. It really. If I read this before seeing the movie, I still would have loved it.
Yeah, me too.
Like, still, it's really great.
And it is. We talk about arcs, and mentors are often part of the arcs. There's a couple things I saw going around, but ultimately, if we go down to those 2 arcs that make up everything that I can never remember.
I was going to ask you.
I remember one of them.
2 really important things that we talk about all the time.
Most important thing. Their most important 2 things are number 1. No, but
right.
The one I know is to be more confident.
Be more confident.
And the other one is.
Oh man, what is it? You said
you added a third one, which is work well with others.
Work well with others. It's like empathy or something.
Yeah,
I think
learn empathy.
Miles already had work well with others. So he's already down with that.
Guy.
He's a community guy, right?
But he needed to learn to believe in himself.
Learn to believe in himself. This is definitely one of those, for sure. And a lot of these kind of hero's journey stories are like that when a kid becomes. They're coming of age.
It's your standard from a Miles standpoint. It's your standard hero's journey.
Arc is very standard, but it's presented in a fantastic.
Oh
way.
yeah, dude! Like we've never seen before in a movie of this.
But but at its core, it's standard and heartwarming.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, I don't think that breaks any new ground.
No,
but that's
no,
good.
not at all. No, that's why we
Yeah.
respond to it.
Right.
But breaking those mentor stories, breaking those learning stories, breaking those arc stories down in the beginning, middle, and ends, or even if you want to give them 4 acts or something before you write, I think is really valuable. Or even after, I find that really useful technique after you've written a script to go back and analyze where those beats are. Like just strip out, okay, where are my beats of learning?
Yeah.
It doesn't just set up and then pay off. It needs to have the middle beats. It needs to
the
have those
middle
learning
lesson.
beats.
I love
agree.
if you read, when we're reading the script, I love the names of the chapters. Like it was like the rise of Miles Morales.
It's
and
great.
stuff. Like they knew the beats were named in the script.
Right.
Yeah.
I do that with
One was
treatments.
just like one was just like everybody fights or something. Like they would just name the exact scene. I think that might have been an animation thing though.
What Jimmy said, it's a common technique to do in treatments. You just give them little beats, almost like chapter descriptions.
Yeah.
The first time I saw that was on the Word Player website. I remember they posted their original Godzilla screenplay that never got made, or their treatment.
I bet it was
and
awesome.
it had all. They had the screenplay up there too. This was the pre Matthew Broderick.
Okay.
So, and they had so you can go to Wordplay and look at theirs, but they use titles in their treatments, like the titles in bold, and then they describe what happens in that in a paragraph, and then another title and another title.
Very similar to how the script introduces it in bold. And,
absolutely, very similar.
It works.
It
was more fun of a read.
Those guys.
Here we go.
Yeah, right.
Those guys wrote the movie Shrek. They probably did that.
Man, I don't hate
Pirates of the Caribbean.
But speaking of which,
I like Puss in Boots. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking about setups, and this movie, we talked about it in our Home Alone episode, just how amazing that opening scene is with all the setups. This movie has another bunch of lightning fast setups that just are flying by
sharp
you.
too.
Yeah. They're just
tack sharp,
coming at you one at a time.
And I think Jimmy wrote a novel about him, if I'm not mistaken.
I did.
Over here.
I'm taking a deep breath.
Jimmy has 10 pages worth of setups to list.
No, so
stay tuned for the Jimmy podcast coming up in 3 seconds.
I have my voice back too. Remember we tried to do this when I didn't have my voice?
Yeah.
No, so one thing to note is a lot of the setup, it's really the first act of this movie to page 20 to the moment he gets bit by the spider is pure setup. Mm-hmm. Even after, we're only going to talk about the first 10 minutes, and I went to 11 pages because I felt like that it's a very clear cut when that montage ends at the 10 minutes in the school that it's meant to be the 10-page setup.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, in a superhero origin story, I usually use this as an example. Bit by a radioactive spider is a classic catalyst. Incident. It is the classic. So that's usually where the setup kind of ends, and then we're into something else.
Yeah, the upside down world.
And if you read the script here, because of course there's things like Save the Cat that say it must be page 12. You'll see, I think the bit by a radioactive spider comes about page 18, 19, somewhere in there.
It's 20.
But 20.
Yeah.
Did it in Rammy's movie? Is that about that?
I have no idea. As far as
I feel like that was
goes.
like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't be beholden to page numbers.
Don't worry about the page numbers too much.
Don't do that.
And especially,
I'm green.
Especially in a screenplay, because again, 133 pages, tight format, but it ends up being 120 minutes.
How many times I got to say it? Rocky isn't challenged till 45 minutes in.
Yeah.
But you also have to keep in mind, the people who are reading this and standing in the way of the further success of the script.
Right. But back to your setup.
Here we go.
I have one criticism in here, and I can't.
Okay.
I want to talk about it. Only one.
I'll ramble through, and then you guys can cut me off when something comes to mind.
Oh, we will.
Okay.
We're excited about it.
All right. Page 1 and 2.
Okay, let's not talk about stuff. Go ahead.
Page 1 and 2. I'm not going to say 1 and 2 minutes. I'm going to say pages. Sure. It sets up the self-awareness of the iconic story we're all familiar with, right? It goes into all the past things we know about the character and basically everything we think we know about this world. It sets up the future introduction device of all the spider heroes to come, and it ends by saying, "There's only one Spider-Man, and you're looking at him."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to meet Miles. He listens to hip hop. He draws street art tags. He is not the keeper of the Spider-Man mantle we've ever seen before. He's nothing like that. Right. He's new. The scene visually introduces his uncle in the background in a photo. His parents yell that he's late for school, and we see that he hasn't packed his bag because he doesn't want to go.
Right.
Okay, that's page 2 to 3. In contrast to his love of art and culture, we see he is dressed in generic private school uniform. Page 3 to 4. We meet his parents, a black father, a Puerto Rican mother. They have a hectic life, but it's a loving, happy family, and that's very clear. His mother smothers him with love as he rushes out the door, and the script describes him as pretending not to love it. Page 4 to 5. Miles heads to school and walks past the old middle school he used to go to, and he longs for it.
Talks to his friends. Right?
He walks through the vibrant neighborhood, and he passes his old friends and neighbors, and we see, as a rooting influencer, that not only does he love his community, but they love him. And we are also shown that he clearly feels that he's betraying his community by walking past it to go somewhere else. Page 5 to 6. Miles slaps...
It's even kind of a class note there.
Yeah.
He's going to the rich school.
He's
going to the rich school.
And he feels less than.
Yeah.
You know, and he thinks that's okay.
Right.
Like, he wants to be less than.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Page 5 to 6. Miles slaps homemade stickers with his street tag on objects throughout his path to school. Police lights flash, and the story subverts our expectations of a black kid getting harassed by police when we learn that the police are actually his dad. And his dad is a police officer, which we didn't know up front.
Which happened only minutes ago, too. It's really quick.
It's so quick.
Yeah. Which makes you even not question it more.
You don't question it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Even some of the things I think I remember, too, there are lots of mentions of the collider and the earthquake that are snuck in there that when I watched the movie, I didn't even realize that was I just thought
that's in the next. It's awesome.
That was going to be my
that's
criticism.
Coming. Okay, here we go. No, we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's not yet. Or you're almost there, Jamie.
Okay.
So his dad picks him up. During page 6 to 7, during the car ride, Dad tells Miles that he doesn't want him slapping tags on the things in the community, which upsets Miles. And it's clear that he doesn't support his art, but his dad feels guilty about not doing that. It's described in the script as he feels guilty for it. Their relationship is clearly awkward. Then a radio report teases the super collider, and it talks about seismic events that just happened last night,
which is a trope. And I can deal with that.
Yeah, it's a trope.
But we're going to get to where I'm going to...
And the authorities blame Spider-Man, which then the dad expresses his hatred for Spider-Man. And not only that, he's sort of like the heckler to this movie. He mocks the hero's mantle. He says, I really like his cereal, though. Right. And then he mocks and messes up the public motto, with great power comes great responsibility. He says it all wrong. And Miles is like, that's not how it goes.
He's kind of the guy who's like, I hate Spider-Man now, but I did like that first one.
Exactly.
Why do they need to make more Spider-Man? We don't need more Spider-Man. They made the good one before. We don't need a new one.
Yeah, he's a response to the heckler.
Yeah, he's that guy.
The script and the movie makes it a point to visually show their car exiting Brooklyn and heading into Manhattan.
Yeah.
Signifying that his new school is somewhere away from his community. Page 8 and 9, the car pulls up to Vision's Academy. Miles says he refuses to get out, and he says, I want to go back to my old school. And he says that this school is elitist and he doesn't belong. And then the dad says he deserves to go there. He earned his place. He passed the exam to get in there.
Miles is smart.
Tells us that he's like brilliant.
Yeah.
His dad talks about like the themes, opportunity, choices, expectations, and warns if you don't make these smart choices, you're going to end up like your uncle, which Miles immediately defends. And it's like, what's wrong with my uncle? Right, so we learn all these, we get these seeds planted.
We also learn later that his dad knows he has a soft spot for his uncle, which I thought was a little nuance there.
I
nice.
Love that.
His dad knows he likes his uncle.
We know, exactly.
Yeah.
This is still on page 8 to 9. Miles gets out, and Dad embarrasses him with that great setup over the car intercom in front of all the students. Not leaving until you say I love you.
Making him feel more like an outsider.
Right. He's already in it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Page 10 to 11, Miles enters the cutting edge school. Everything is visually a stark, expensive contrast to the modest environment we just saw him thriving in. And Miles is clearly uncomfortable. He travels the halls, and despite his best effort, and he goes to a lot of effort, there's 2 or 3 lines, no one interacts with him like we just saw him interacting with his community. Right, so it's like a nice quick reversal,
They make fun of him a little bit.
Yeah, they make fun of him. I love you.
Yeah.
The setup ends with a montage at school with papers, books, and lessons figuratively and literally weighing him down. Teachers yell out assignments and specific words they're stressed and focused on. 2 chapters of Great Expectations. Take-home quiz on volumetric pressure. Industrial revolution is incapable. An enormous change is unstoppable. And then Miles runs through emptying hallways, overwhelmed. The bell rings. Setup is ending. That's 12 pages. Probably, I don't know in the movie.
So you hadn't got to the classroom yet?
Right. That's all page 12.
Never mind then. I was thinking something else.
The way that the script presents it, there's extra space on the page where normally it's been crammed. So it feels like they want this to signify the end of the hook. You know, they like go to extra effort to separate it from the next part of the story.
It's like we've set this character up. Now we're going to tell a story about him.
Exactly. So, I mean, look at all the things we learn, and then there's so much more that's set up. But
yeah, because even subtle things like him doing street art pays off for the catalyst. Like,
exactly.
That's the reason he ends up at the catalyst.
It's the first beat of the of that.
It's a lot of like smaller stuff, subtle stuff. The stuff again about the uncle, things like that. Bob, you said you had 2 quibbles.
I thought that I didn't know that that's where it stopped. I was going to say that this only small criticism I had was he walks into the classroom right after the setup.
It's the next scene.
It's the next scene. And I thought this is a weird quibble, but I thought it was unnecessary that the teacher was teaching about alternate dimensions.
Yeah, it's convenient.
It's way too convenient. And it's also a trope that they're always teaching the thing in class that the movie has to do with.
Go to the classroom.
Go to the classroom. I thought the radio covered it. It didn't. We would have gotten that information later anyway.
It was more for Doc Ock, I think, than anything. Or
I know. I just didn't think we needed that. That's if we were talking script criticisms. I was just like, you probably could have not said it again. It's just too on the nose.
Yeah, I got you.
Because there's a lot of conveniences and coincidences in this plot, which I'm fine with.
Me
but
too.
That was one where I was just like, that's weird that she was teaching about alternate dimensions. Yeah, okay. It's such a small quibble. It doesn't hurt anything.
There are a lot of coincidences in this, much like
there it is.
Much like some comic books have. Not all comic books.
As we've established on the show several times, when it's funny, it doesn't matter.
Off the top, for sure.
Comedy forgives the coincidence, but there is a lot of.
I think the reason it works is because. There's a shit ton too, and I'm sure I missed a lot. But after you guys wrote this talking point, I went back and I like kind of broke it down. I was like, I don't remember having this. I listed like 7 right away. It's like, holy shit.
Also, isn't it? It's important.
Some of them they try to give reasons for. Like
they do the patch that Halloween did after the fact.
Well,
my spidey senses told me to go to that classroom. We learned 75 pages later why Gwen was in the class with him.
The uncle. I'll give you an example. Like the uncle being the villain. At the end, to me that was a coincidence, but the reason it's not is because the whole reason he became Spider-Man was because his uncle took him to a place he worked, which was beneath the collider, which is so there's some versions of this that kind of unravel.
Miles is pulled in. He wasn't predestined to be Spider-Man. He is pulled in for a reason, which you just said.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So that's not technically
it's not a coincidence.
It's like universal fate intertwining.
It's not a coincidence like say maybe Homecoming had. Spoiler alert! Coincidence where Michael Keaton was the father.
Just so happens to be the father,
which was a great scene, and I almost forgive the coincidence just to have the scene.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that. They actually had a reason.
Yeah.
There's another one. I think Spider-Gwen being in his class to me was stretching things a little bit.
But Jimmy said it was they patched
75 pages later, she says, my spidey senses told me to go there.
Yeah. Like somebody else had that my note, and then they patched it up a little bit.
They could have probably
not the worst.
They could have gotten rid of her being in that class, honestly. And her introduction in the woods would have been fine.
Right.
It doesn't ruin
it. Has the one standard one, which is he just so happens to be in the tunnel when the radioactive spider comes.
That's the one you get.
That's the one you get. That's what I mean. That's
to
the
me.
One.
Okay, this is really kind of philosophical, but to me, that's not a coincidence. That we're telling the story the story is actually about.
You know what?
The
That's
guy
a good call.
Who got bit by a spider?
You know what? That's a great
that's
call.
Why it's not,
the pre-knowledge of knowing Miles is going to get bit by a spider doesn't make that a coincidence.
That's
you
a good
know
call.
What I'm saying? It's really weird.
That's a necessary moment.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that the audience is hoping to
Well, we're
see.
here to see the story of the guy who did get bit.
Good call.
So, yeah.
I didn't think about it
Yeah,
that
when
way.
people talk about that with a lot of movies, we're like, wait, so...
I didn't even think about it until you guys said this note, and I was like, shit, you're right.
Yeah.
One of the coincidences I always bring up is Spider-Man 3 drives me crazy. How the Venom goop just happens to land on Peter Parker.
No, Jamie, literally since the day I saw it, I walked out of the theater, and that's why I hated the movie. I hated the fact it just falls 14 feet from Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The only superhuman on Earth.
Right.
I was like, it drove me nuts.
Like
and I didn't even care about scripts back then. I was just like, how can he not care?
That is my example I usually use when I talk about coincidences. I use that.
the goop.
That one bothered me so much. I was just sitting there raging the whole movie.
There's literally the friends I saw it with listening to this podcast. I literally said they couldn't have just added like the goop seeing the Earth with like a heat vision, and then they see Peter stands out and he kind of guides himself,
trying to find some unique human.
He like flying squirrel guides himself to Peter, or give me any reason.
I mean,
why he falls near Peter.
My spider sense led me to the academy. That's all you need. But yeah,
just let me know you're trying.
Yeah. No,
on.
they made an effort.
Yeah, they
Absolutely.
did.
I personally dislike. So this is me on my soapbox. When I mention something like that, they go, "It's a comic book." Well,
yeah, I agree.
I kind of hate when people
work
say
harder
stuff like that. I can understand it's a comedy and it made you laugh. That works for me. But just it's a comic book doesn't do it for me.
For it to be completely forgiven, it needs to be like Step Brothers level stupid.
Yeah,
you know, where it's like that funny and that dumb that nothing matters.
Where almost the coincidence is funny or something.
Yeah, like it should just be like
or
it's a meta coincidence that doesn't even matter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the Super Collider and its like After Effects is kind of what absolves all the coincidences, because all these random spider people are getting sucked in and shot out.
Well, it's aiming
universe.
at spider people.
Yeah. So it almost like says
it's
now a bunch of coincidences are going to happen as a result.
It's a coincidence
of this.
machine.
Exactly.
Yeah,
no,
right.
I know. And it kind of presents itself as that, right? So, because it's a major coincidence that Miles goes to Peter Parker's grave and then his mentor shows up at the very moment that he's at the grave. It's a huge coincidence, but the machine had just dumped him out at that time.
But they kind of cover that because Peter B. Parker gets there. He sees all this stuff, propaganda about how Spider-Man's dead.
Yeah.
So he would go to the
No,
cemetery.
I know, but the timing of them appearing at the cemetery at the exact moment is it just so happens.
That's one. Then I think we're at the point though where we're talking about movies.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like
no,
that's just,
I know.
That's not even. I don't know if that's as much a coincidence as it is still to some degree a movie.
I straight up disagree with you, but that's okay.
No,
it's lazy.
I guess,
but it works.
I don't think that's lazy though. I mean, it's
only
I do
because I think it's equal to the
on
Spider-Man
the same day that it
Venom
happens,
level.
though.
What'd you say?
I think it's almost as equal to the Venom landing.
Yeah,
thing.
I think
almost.
it's just
really because it's the same day. And it's right
I
after
don't think
the
this
funeral.
is an incredible script, and I could never write something as good as this.
But
I'm just saying.
But it's the same day. It's like the day that he got spit out.
It's the
Why
timing
wouldn't
moment. I mean, it's
It's a tricky one.
It works.
Yeah.
It works.
I think there's a reason for both of them to be there, and that's enough to.
I went to the bathroom at that point, so they were together, and I just assumed there was a patch.
Right, but it's not like they're at a random. They didn't meet in a burger joint.
They went there next.
Well, no, but I'm saying they went to Spider-Man's grave, and that's like enough for the audience.
You're saying it's motivated that
there's
they
a
both
motivation behind them being there.
Absolutely,
the fact that it's just at the same time during the day when everything's going to shit. I think that's enough. I don't think that's bad. You know,
you've convinced me.
No, the location's enough. Yeah.
It's motivated. They go there.
The one other topic that I kind of wanted to bring up with this movie is, it's our second African American superhero movie, I guess.
No, it's a huge. We got to talk about this.
Yeah.
Black Panther came out in 2018. As long as 2018 felt.
Yeah.
Black Panther and this.
And one thing
insane.
One thing that I really like.
That was right. That just happened. It's crazy.
Yep. Last year was a big year for representation.
One thing, and you can see it at like the Golden Globes this year. That's what it was all about, and it was organically so. It didn't seem forced or anything. It just, the movies that were made this year happened to be representing a lot of different,
they were
people that haven't been represented.
Two
before.
of the best comic book movies that came out this year.
Yes,
Black Panther and Spider-Verse. Yeah.
So we didn't get to this question, which is there anything we can take from the success of this with our own screenwriting? And I think that the greatest thing that this movie does is female and race representation, right? It subverts gender and racial stereotypes in a movie like we've never seen in a comic book movie before. In
as much as Jamie was saying, like, how this movie and, the Deadpool discussion, how this movie has to happen now in this genre, this movie needs to happen now in this culture.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a perfect movie for both of those things. It has to happen right now, and it's perfect. Yeah.
It's like a beautiful thing watching
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing I like about it too is, so I remember after John Wick came out, there were a bunch of people that were doing, John Wick with a chick. And there were tons of spec screenplays that flooded the market where people just took
they were doing
character.
the Die Hard with John Wick. Die Hard on a plane. On a bus.
They just did a cut and paste and changed the character from John to Jane, and they sent it out. But what I like about this movie is it's set in Brooklyn, so the fact that it is this inclusive is organic to the material.
Absolutely.
That's what Brooklyn looks like. It just looks like our world.
It feels motivated. It earns it.
There's not some other cut and paste.
It's not
thing
cheap
going.
in any
It's
way.
not cheap in anything.
Yeah. No, so we've never talked about. Well, first of all,
it's something we never have addressed.
No,
as three white guys doing a podcast, which is so rare.
Yeah.
Three white guys doing a movie podcast.
The struggle is real.
Right.
I'm glad that we're the one out of millions that they're deciding to do the bold choice. Yeah. Anyway, good.
So, first I'll talk about the gender subversions, and then I want to talk about the Bechdel test because, so Aunt May, instead of our typical Aunt May, is a fearless lady.
She's
like nothing scares her.
She's a badass Alfred.
Yeah, she's Alfred.
Yeah.
And not only that, even when Dr. Octopus invades her house, she's like, oh, it's Liv. Like, she doesn't even break a sweat, which is like so not what we're used to seeing with the hapless Aunt May. I mean, she's always very nurturing, but she's never been fearless like this.
Because the Aunt May in Peter B. Parker's universe is probably the Raimi Aunt May. I'm
exactly.
I was getting that because she's dead. She was older.
And Peter expects that too.
He does.
He's like, oh, Aunt May.
It's subverting his own expectation in the movie.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so smart.
Yeah.
Gwen Stacy is not a love interest. In fact, she is specifically a friendly ally.
But by the way, interesting, in an early draft, apparently she was, and their female producer kind of pointed out that maybe that wasn't a great idea, and they adjusted.
That's awesome.
That's
I was
great.
so worried that
note.
they were going to kiss in the end, and I didn't want that because I was loving how they were handling, that relationship and not going with the standard love story.
Thank God. That's a great note. Sometimes
a great note.
Producers do have good notes every now and then. Yeah.
Dr. Octopus is not only a woman, but we're seeing another female. She's a brilliant scientist, right? So once again,
which Doc Ock always was.
Yeah, but now we're showing a woman, who's
a scientist.
A scientist.
Which I love that little quip where he's talking about how they're going to invade the thing, and he says, "I'm going to get a scientist." He's like, "Well, that lady's the head scientist." Well, first I'm going to re-examine my personal biases.
Exactly. No, that's
they literally call it that. Yeah.
Okay, but this is going to be a good discussion here. Okay, so the Bechdel test, which we've never talked about, I'm gonna assume the audience knows what it is.
No,
let's say
the
rules. Say the rules out loud.
Okay, so it's from a comic artist named Alison Bechdel, and it measures representation of women in film, and it asks 3 basic questions. And
did we not talk about this?
We've never talked about this.
We didn't.
Nope. We've never talked about this.
We dropped the ball a little.
We dropped the ball.
Okay.
So, are there 2 female characters with names, not just 2 unnamed females, who talk to each other? That's question number 2. 3, about something other than a man. Okay?
Yes.
This movie? Okay. Because I looked it over twice.
Yeah.
Because I found there's a ton of sites out there if you're interested in looking at. Many of the movies, your most famous movies, fail this test.
Probably like every movie before 1995.
God, absolutely.
BechdelTest.com has it's like Alive, the movies that come out now. Spider-Verse isn't on there, but like A Quiet Place is on there and it fails.
Does Alive fail? The movie. Sorry.
Is there any females in Alive?
Yeah, there's females that
I
were in
don't
the plane.
remember.
They get eaten
They
first.
eat first.
I remember seeing somebody saying The Thing fails, and I was like, well...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no women in the movie.
Yeah, right.
So within reason, this test.
Yes, it's a... right.
So I didn't believe what I read this. I thought for sure this movie passed the Bechdel test, right? But then I found all these multiple websites who measure this, who said it failed. And then I went through the script. And so there's only one moment in the whole script where two females talk to each other about something other than a man. And that is Doc Ock comes in and says, nice place, real homie. And Aunt May says, oh, great, it's Liv. That's the only, that's
It doesn't
one
say what length they
exchange.
got to talk.
Does that mean it passes the Bechdel
Not really,
test?
but...
I think it means it fails it, because... How could this movie, which still does a great job of subverting gender...
So anime Spider-Man and Gwen never talk to each other
Nope.
about anything, I guess?
Nope.
That would have been like a thing.
Yeah, so it fails. It fails the Bechdel test for all the greatness of this.
You mean Penny Parker?
Yeah.
Penny Parker.
Penny Parker.
Yeah.
I thought they talked. Well, I guess
Nope.
they don't.
Nah, I went through
guess
it
they
twice,
don't.
man.
I mean, that one exchange does kind of qualify.
Does it qualify? I'd love to
It's
hear what
like-
our female listeners would say about it.
We'd love to hear
Yeah,
it.
we'd love to hear
As
it.
if, as if we have a female
Yeah.
listener.
Yeah, no, it's a technicality pass,
as if
but
we have
it's like
listeners.
Yeah,
not
it's
great.
almost. Yeah, it's not a great one.
It's not a great one.
It's not one that fuels the spirit of it.
No,
It's
not
one
at all.
We're not going to hold
Exactly.
this movie up and be like, it's Bechdel certified.
Yeah, no. I would
Right.
say it fails, which is a bummer. Okay, so
I would say it gets a D minus.
it gets a D minus.
D minus, 'cause
because the
it-
Bechdel test.
I think the female, like we said, the love story is that they're just friends. It handles them well. It just the test itself.
that being said, like those
Also,
gender subversions.
Want to
are
point
great.
out too, they're all the characters they're working with outside of Doc Ock are established characters that they have a history and they stuck with them. So some of the choices of the
you
gender
had to go
and stuff,
there.
they're
Had to.
Obviously, if you would recast Peter Parker as the alternate reality, Penny Parker, and that was the lead
right.
Yeah.
as the mentor, then it would have been a different story.
Yeah, and it
Sorry.
would have been an easy pass.
Easy pass.
Okay, so then the
Not in
next,
this case.
so bouncing off of that, I'm going to take a quote from the Hollywood Reporter, which I think encapsulates the greatness of this movie perfectly, and it's about racial subversions of stereotypes. And this guy named Richard Newby of the Hollywood Reporter says, "For kids of color who dream of being superheroes, Into the Spider-Verse leaves us with a clear message. We could always be Spider-Man with the mask on, but now, and perhaps more importantly, we can be Spider-Man with the mask off as well." Which I think is really powerful.
It's a good quote, man.
And it captures
Such a good quote.
Yeah, it captures what's so wonderful about this movie. And personally, I think that goes for gender as well.
Yeah. Well, there's the other test, right?
Yeah. The next one. So okay. So should I say the test first, or should I go into how the characters themselves subvert our stereotypes?
Let's do the test, and then we'll talk about the characters.
Okay. Yeah. So it's Ava DuVernay.
We're talking about this too because we believe that they did this intentionally, right? This is
absolutely.
This is all in there.
This is in the construction. Yeah.
Okay.
So this test was made by the Sundance Film Festival after listening to Ava DuVernay talk about what is that Nate Silver movie? Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
So, and then she saw it and she was like honored and endorsed it. And now it's on 538. They measure it. 538 has a great breakdown where they have like 10 different tests now of representation and gender representation from a staffing standpoint, from all involved. There's all these awesome things. So the test measures representation of people of color in film. And it's very similar to the Bechdel test in its questions. Number one question is, are there two people of color with names? So they can't just be no name.
That's a huge
deal. Right?
For this movie.
For this movie.
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. Who talk to each other? Yes. Absolutely. So it automatically passes. about something other than a white person. Absolutely.
Yeah. The car ride alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In the beginning. Yeah.
Are they not romantically involved? Well, you have his parents, but there's still other moments where Uncle Aaron and Miles are talking about things that have nothing to do with
being
found.
Yeah. Well, they said romantic. They didn't.
They said romantic. Does that mean, are they not a couple? That's all.
Yeah. Miles is not romantically involved with anyone.
And is one of them definitely not magical? So Miles becomes magical, but he wasn't magical to start with.
It's a movie where everyone's kind of magical, though. It's kind of the flat line. It's a baseline of everyone's magical.
Even with this movie passes with flying colors.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, but so anyway, for any writers listening out there, I think both of these tests are really instructive and really important. And I would say maybe, especially with the gender representation, most of my clients are men, and I would say a decent portion of the scripts I get would not pass the female representation or Bechdel test. I think a lot of the scripts. I think people are very aware of the importance of diversity.
The diversity one probably comes with production more. I guess, right?
I think I see a lot more diversity in scripts than I do gender representation.
To an extent, I think one of the keys to helping diversity, though, there was a time when I would never even mention race in my scripts. I'd be like, I'll let them cast it.
Yeah.
I think there's a push now to actually mention it, to push them towards going in that direction. But I think that's what I love about this one, is instead of just randomly assigning a race or gender to somebody, this one it's organic. I mean, write stories that might take place in Brooklyn and might have different, looks and feels to cultures and things like that. That's what I love about this one, as opposed to just they did some new casting,
right? Like Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, it's the opposite of Star Wars.
But it's not that was bad.
No, not that it was bad at all. Star Wars feels strategic. This one feels organic.
It feels organic. It's the only way I feel like you could do this and make the story right.
Also, Miles is an established character. I mean,
right.
You guys know that.
Yeah. But a lot of the audience does.
By the way, created by Brian Michael Bendis. So I think.
Right, that is true. Yeah, I mean.
We haven't mentioned.
We should have.
He didn't. I don't think he had any involvement with the script or
I think he was a consultant.
Was he a consultant?
I think I saw it in the end. Yeah.
Okay.
But I just wanted to break down the characters. So Miles is a Puerto Rican and black superhero. So he's biracial. He is the first Afro-Latino to headline a Marvel picture, which is very important. And, makes him relatable to a huge portion of the audience who could never relate to, a Marvel hero before.
Right, exactly.
His culture is celebrated. Like, it's very clear that it's an important part of who he is and what makes him a great hero. Like his love of hip hop, his Brooklyn neighborhood, his affinity for street art, all of those things are what makes him Miles Morales. It's awesome. And it's why we love him, so all of those things, none of those things are used kind of as just like a quirk. They're used to make the character greater. Because a lot of stories would just use it as kind of like a one-off quirk. This movie, all of those things make him a better Spider-Man.
Where I've seen this. We've never really had this discussion on this podcast, but like I've seen it when this came up with Black Panther. A lot of people kept pointing to the '90s stuff, like Blade and Man. I don't know. Blade is the specific example I kept seeing, like edgelords on Twitter point to. Like,
of course.
Oh, you forgot about Blade, I guess.
Of course.
But Blade, while Blade is, I love Blade.
Yeah.
Completely. Unlike this movie, that movie's not inherently has anything to do with him being black.
Not at all.
And it's also, I've read some great criticism of that claim where why does every time there is a black superhero or black hero, why they have to be so dark and gritty and miserable and hate themselves? Like, you see someone like Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther or Miles Morales, like it's like a positive, bright,
vibrant.
Like that's what we haven't seen.
And
that's why this is
It's pleasant.
It's pleasant. Yeah. Nothing against Blade
and fun.
Yeah. Right.
No, great. Blade is dark and morose, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, Blade's great, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
Miles' mom is a Puerto Rican. In my opinion, she is Aunt May. She is the Aunt May of this story she is unaware of what's going on with him, really, and she is strong, maternal, and supportive. She says to him that great line, "Our family never runs from anything," which is kind of what I feel is like an Aunt May line, your standard Aunt May line, which is a great subversion of our expectations of that Aunt May character. Miles' dad is a Black supportive father, shown as loving and nurturing and a figure of authority who's respected in the community. Like, everybody loves him, which is such a great figure to have in one of these movies, and not what we're used to seeing in these movies. I mean, let's be honest, other than Black Panther. Let's be honest. That's an example from this year. So it's not really, what I mean? What you're saying is from 30 years of watching movies. Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. And even Penny Parker, even though they don't really go into it, she is voiced by an actress who is biracial, white and Japanese, which feels almost intentional, just in the spirit of the piece, hiring someone like that to do this voice role. So yeah, I think, when you ask, they left the cartoons and the dark gritty for the white guys. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you ask the question, what can we take from this as screenwriting to, in our future scripts? I mean, it is gender roles and diversity. Definitely. When you write, you're writing for an audience, and the audience is changing and should be. So, Yeah. This is a movie for now, and hopefully it can start a trend. So yeah. That's an important thing to talk about. Yeah. I mean, for sure. Thank you, Jimmy, for doing those. You asked that great question, and it just we haven't talked about it, and it's very important. If there was a movie to talk about it with, there's no better one. I mean, I left the theater thinking, just watching kids in the audience who weren't white, and you could just tell how much they were responding to the material. I thought it was beautiful and also powerful. I don't want to be so flat and monosyllabic, but it's important when you do a movie like this that it's good. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people were worried Black Panther was going to be, what if Black Panther was terrible? Right? And I'd be like, oh no, don't God. So this is this is a labor of love in every corner aspect of how it's written. Even so, those movies have a lot of pressure on them. Like Captain Marvel, I think, is the next one up. It has a lot of pressure on it. For that reason. Wonder Woman had a lot of pressure. Look forward to the day when I think after I saw Black Panther, I said to my friend who I saw with, I was like, I look forward to the day when it's just normal that we see this movie. Absolutely. And I look forward to the day when they can do Black Panther Ragnarok, where it's so normalized that they can normalize. Thank you. That's a perfect way to put it. When they can just have fun with it. Doesn't need to be so weighty. They can actually have jokes. To do into the Black Panther verse. Into the Black Panther verse. Yes. No, normalize is a cartoon pig Black Panther. I don't know if that would work as well. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that'll work, but yeah. No, that you put it perfectly. Because I remember thinking this when I saw the Wonder Woman trailer. It was like, finally, the character has been around for 75 years, and there's never been a movie. Just a TV show. How fucking sad is that? The TV show was the premiere. What does that say about the culture? Outside of cartoons, who's making the creative decisions to bring these things to life? Well, I think it's definitely. I think Captain Marvel will. I'm cross my fingers, knock on wood. Awesome. It's gonna be great. Hopefully, we get a Black Widow movie that's not atrocious, and it'll keep going. Are the Soska sisters doing that? I think I don't remember. What are they doing? Aren't the Soska sisters doing the Black Widow movie? Oh, I don't know. Maybe just the comic. Maybe they just taken over the comic. I don't know. Let's talk about... Yeah, either way, I just want to thank Jimmy for... He kind of brought that whole thing, and that's something we definitely needed to talk about. Yeah. So, yeah. Right. Go ahead. Sorry. By the way, when I'm laughing about these things, it's like a false emotional response to the seriousness of it. And how important it is. How dare you? No, it's a weird thing to talk about as three privileged white dudes sitting around the table, just like when we were talking about Get Out. We're privileged enough to have a podcast about movies. Yeah. That's how privileged we are. Sitting here talking with our iPhones next to us. And, right. Comedy. Let's talk about bring the comedy. It fun. Back to the fun. Who asked this question? This was Jamie. I think I was putting it there more because we've had this track with comedy about this one comic obsession, and I sort of love the fact that it has tracked so far. Big time.
Do you think it still tracks in this one as
Absolutely.
The single comedic
Do you?
obsession.
Yeah, the single comedic. I think so.
I do, but I want to hear what you guys think the obsession
Go for it,
is.
Jamie.
Well,
and I'll say.
I was gonna say I have a harder time targeting it.
Ooh,
so,
I got it.
Jimmy's always good at
You got
that.
it.
I was just.
I want to see if I know what it is, but I want to see if I agree with you guys.
So one thing I'm noticing is that often the comics obsession is also the need.
Okay,
It's a thing that's
makes
coming
sense.
up now.
that makes sense.
It's now that this is like the 5th one we've done,
Mhm.
and it's really it's not always, but it often aligns with the character need is also their obsession.
No, that's great. That's great.
So with Miles, all the comedy from his character comes around him saying, "I'm not ready. I can't do this."
This lack of
Right?
confidence.
All of these
Yeah.
lack of confidence
Yeah.
moments lead to the comedy with him.
But is
doesn't believe that he can meet expectations in his family, school, friends, love, interests, or Spider-Man abilities, and all the comedy comes
Mhm,
from that.
mhm.
What are you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna. What do you view as his obsession for that?
He's just obsessed with the fact I can't do this. He says I can't do it
He's,
7
okay,
times.
he's like
I
over.
tracked it.
He's obsessed with being in and over his head.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, he's obsessed with
Yeah.
the fact that he is not worthy.
That's awesome.
Incapable. Yeah.
I was gonna say something completely different.
What say it?
I was gonna say that the comedic obsession in this movie to me was Peter B. Parker and his obsession to run away.
Well, it's each of these characters.
Yeah, each character
each
has
That's what
character
we're
has
breaking
that.
it
But
down.
that to
I
me,
love that.
to me, that's where if the movie had a main comedic thread,
Mhm.
I think he's the funniest part of the whole movie.
Yeah,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure,
definitely.
for sure.
And his comic obsession is to run away.
So
Yeah.
that's
He wants to. He wants to.
They
escape
can
his
have
life.
more than
Yeah,
one,
They
and
can
that-
have more than one.
and
right.
that's what's great. Like I go back to Frasier and Niles. They have multiple ones, and
Mhm.
that's why the
Frasier
shows
being the pinnacle of all
consistently-
comedy.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well,
I
they're
love
just
Frasier. I'm just
their characters are so easy to
they
track.
Are. They are.
Miles' dad is his hatred for Spider-Man. All the comedy that comes out of his character is from
And
his
his love
hatred
for his son.
Spider-Man. Yeah, but
Maybe the biggest laugh in the movie with
that's
"I love
true.
you."
I love you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
two
Mhm.
biggest
Yeah.
laughs.
But
in
they
the movie.
combine them in the end with the
Yeah.
love and the
Right.
hatred of Spider-Man.
And then all the other spiders all have their own specific.
So
right,
I looked
straight up.
and I didn't find they do have traits, but
do have
I only
traits.
found comic obsessions for a couple of them. So Peter, you said it runs away. I think that's true.
He wants to escape his life
he
to the
wants
point
to
where he
leave.
will commit suicide
I know.
to do it.
Yeah.
That's how bad his life is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like obsessed with it. Yeah.
I said he's old and past his prime.
Mhm.
It's the
Oh,
comedy.
For me, it's just escaping his
Yeah,
life.
escaping is that's putting it way more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Gwen is all the comedy from her comes out of her refusal to make friends. Her and Miles literally get stuck together. She is a character who doesn't want to make friends with anybody, who gets stuck to another human who
She
wants to be her
She
friend.
wants to push away,
That's
and
good.
she's constantly getting thrown into it. Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's very literal. Spider Noir is a man at a time, and all the comedy from him comes from he speaks 30 slang, and when he talks, like no one understands what he's saying.
He's obsessed with color.
Yeah, he's obsessed with
'Cause he's
color.
not
Yeah,
using the
He-
color,
yeah,
yeah.
But and he keeps calling the collider the gizmo, and everybody's like, "What?" And he takes the Rubik's cube home with
Right,
him.
right,
I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna figure it out. Spider Ham, and this one's consistent. This one's almost every single moment in the story is that he's a cartoon.
Right.
And he's like, "What do you got a problem with cartoons?"
Yeah,
Over and over, he's like, and even when he says that's all, folks, they acknowledge it. Can he do that legally?
Yeah.
Aunt May, I think the comedy from her comes out of the fact that she's fearless. Like every single moment that's funny with her is because she's such a badass, and we're like, what the hell?
She's a character like that is knowingly subverting her own type.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She knows it.
So, I didn't find anything for the rest of the characters, but those all
that's
tracked.
funny.
It's
That's
plenty.
And
funny.
that's
great.
pretty jam packed
Yeah.
of a list.
Yeah.
So
And I think they're pretty consistent. Like all the comedy with them
well,
comes
when
out
you
of
have
those.
so many characters too, you almost have to. You don't get enough time to nurture a whole range of things
Yeah.
anyway. So you kind of each time they get the comment on a scenario, they pretty much have to be a very specific thing that they're
Yeah.
commenting on.
It's a great tool,
Yeah.
right? It's something I
Mhm.
have
I could-
not thought about, and now with every time we're doing this, I'm like, damn,
Right.
Yeah.
it's so simple.
Yeah.
if I could comment the script,
Yeah.
something I didn't realize watching the movie versus reading the script is I didn't realize how late they come in. The extra spiders
Oh yeah.
come
Whoa.
into the movie because like you watch the movie and it feels like they're all kind of in it the whole time.
Yeah.
And really, they're not.
No.
They're like in at the end of the second act almost.
Yeah.
It's like really far into the movie.
It feels like midpoint in the movie. Yeah.
But it's pretty far.
It's
and
like 70-something pages.
Yeah. It's really deep in there. And I was like, man, they do it such a good job at fleshing out what little they have that I felt like I watched a tiny movie with every one of them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's pretty
it's impressive.
Pretty impressive.
If I had to guess,
how many over there? Like 5?
There's 4.
Well, if you count, let's see, Gwen.
Oh, Gwen.
Yeah.
Penny, Peter B.
No, I wasn't counting B, but you're right.
Noir
you're right.
and Porker, 5. Yeah.
So from other dimensions.
I would say probably, this is just my gut feel, Gwen's arrival is probably around the midpoint. Like that's probably somewhere around the midpoint. So, so the other characters even come further
later.
Back than that.
Yeah. It's really impressive. Jesus.
I just thought of one thing. We're kind of at the end of our list.
Yeah, we talked about it.
But I thought one thing we didn't.
Up.
No one wrote. I find this. No one wrote any questions about it, but we didn't talk about Kingpin.
Yeah. No.
We haven't even mentioned Kingpin once in this whole.
Kingpin's not funny. In this, he's scary, which I think oftentimes, like I say, in these kind of comedies that actually have real stakes, it's almost better to go scary than it is to go funny. And he's your classic villain that we've seen from Kingpin and some other iterations that has good reason to be doing what he's doing. You
understand his
there's
motivation.
a personal reason,
and he thinks he's the hero.
Yeah, it's not just like mustache twitchy. I'm gonna do it because of evil. And I agreed.
He views Spider-Man having been responsible for killing his family.
He views Spider-Man as killing his family, and he views these other spider people as the ones standing in the way of him getting his family back.
Right.
Like, definitely. Yeah.
And I don't know that they go hugely in depth with him. He's kind
not
of
at
there
all.
And he stays in the back.
It's simple.
But they keep him scary and fierce.
He's functional.
He has his reasons. Yeah.
They give him like a tick, and that's about it. He's Kingpin. There's no
everything with him works though. It works really well.
No, he's not distracting or anything.
Yeah.
It's not his movie at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's there to be the fist that kills Spider-Man.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I just said we didn't mention it.
No, I know.
It's weird to talk about a comic movie and not mention the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true.
But I think he's pushed in the background for a reason. Yeah. It's functional, everything about
they understand he serves his purpose.
To the point where like Doc Ock pops more for me. Maybe
me too.
Because it's Catherine Hahn.
I think so. Because
Green Goblin is kind of the ultimate Green Goblin, like giant monster Green Goblin.
They changed him so he's not like a talking.
Right.
He's just a physical monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a reason. I mean, like, how much more can you put in the script?
Yeah, no, I know.
You can't fit anything else in there.
Yeah.
So
kitchen sink Spider-Man movie.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's
and it works.
The best compliment I had when I walked out was, which I didn't actually know Phil Lord was involved.
Mm-hmm.
When I walked out, I was like, that was like the Lego Spider-Man movie without being Lego.
Yeah.
And then I found out he did it, and I was like, well, everything makes sense. I was like, okay. Yeah. Anything left to say? Do we?
Dude.
No.
We said a lot.
Said it all.
Okay, let's
Great movie. I love it.
Let's nitpick it to death until we hate it.
No, exactly.
No, it's excellent. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about everything we learned too, right?
Yeah, we kind of talked about.
I think we did it on the way this time.
Yeah, we did it on the way.
Yeah. Okay.
You guys got anything to plug, Jamie?
No, nothing. No. I'm doing nothing.
I mean, Thundergrunt. Subscribe.
Yeah, because we're not good at doing the plugs at the end.
Do you have
Sorry,
Jimmy,
Jay,
you got something?
Jimmy, plug
Come
something.
On, plug something.
Shit, I'm booked till June, dude.
You can see Jimmy on tour this year playing.
How about this? Follow all of us on Twitter.
Yeah.
At Thundergrunt
At Jimmy R. George.
At Jamie_Nash.
Yes.
There. We
plugged
something.
There you go.
We used it. Okay.
One follower, please.
We just want one person.
One person.
No,
please
thank you
follow.
for listening. This was an awesome movie to talk about.
Yeah, it really was. All right, guys. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring 2 professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.